Missouri education officials release new guidance for schools in the upcoming year.
President Biden hosts the Prime Minister of Iraq at the White House. I'm Natalie Brand with what both leaders are saying about the future role of U.S. troops on the ground there.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
The Missouri Department of Education releases new guidance for next school year. This is ZKOAM News at 5. The 2021-2022 school year starts next month for many of our local school districts. The State Department of Education recommends they do a lot of what was being done last year. That includes social distancing and having unvaccinated students wear masks. But they don't recommend vaccinated students wear masks. The Neosho Superintendent Jim Cummins says coming up with their own policies for unvaccinated and vaccinated students will be one of the biggest hurdles they face.
We don't want to create a vaccinated versus unvaccinated rift, but by the same token, we want to encourage people to get the vaccine and do things that will help us stay safe.
One thing the CDC has mandated, everyone on school buses will be required to wear masks. We're going to hear more from the Neosho Superintendent about their preparations for the upcoming year tonight at 6. The Department of Veterans Affairs is the first major federal agency to require healthcare workers to get COVID-19 vaccines. At the VA, vaccines will now be mandatory for certain medical personnel, including physicians, dentists, podiatrists, optometrists, registered nurses, physician assistants, and others who work in departmental facilities or provide direct care to veterans. Employees will have 8 weeks to get vaccinated. 3 Joplin area men indicted in connection with an Oklahoma murder case had previously been charged in a Lamar, Missouri murder. Trey Ackerson, David Morris, and Lane Bronson are among 11 people now charged in connection with the kidnapping and death of Osage Nation resident Jolene Walker Campbell. Ackerson and Bronson are 2 of 4 suspects charged Friday. Campbell's body was discovered in Mays County, Oklahoma in July of 2020. According to the indictment, the defendant suspected that Campbell was a federal informant. Prosecutors in Barton County, Missouri had already charged Morris, Ackerson, and Bronson with second-degree murder for the shooting death of Terry Harless in Lamar, Missouri. That murder also occurred in July of last year. Doug Heddy, it is very hot out there.
It is. It's hot. It's very humid across the region, and we're going to continue to see this over the next several days. The heat and the humidity will definitely be the big weather story across the region. Besides that, nothing going on. We do have some thunderstorms out to our west, really along the I-35 corridor, Wichita to about Oklahoma City. And these are going to sink south and east, may clip some of our northeastern Oklahoma counties. But besides that, most of us are going to stay hot and very dry. We're still sitting into lower 90s right now. And then you factor in the heat index, the humidity, you get the heat index, upper 90s to lower triple digits. And this is actually just going to go up over the next couple days. Through the evening hours, we'll slide back through the 90s, 80s, down into the mid 70s later on tonight. Of course, we're going to look at the work week here in just a bit.
See you then. California's largest wildfire is growing after destroying more than a dozen homes over the weekend. After nearly 2 weeks, the Dixie Fire north of Sacramento is still just 21% contained. It's one of more than 80 fires burning in 11 western states, forcing nearly 8,400 evacuations. The Bootleg Fire is now the 3rd largest ever recorded in Oregon, while destroying nearly 70 homes. Wild weather also hit around the globe over the weekend. Many countries experienced severe flooding and deadly landslides. Parts of Europe, including Belgium and England, got drenched as streets became flooded. And a typhoon in China is flooding entire provinces and has killed dozens so far. Monsoon rains in India have killed more than 130 people and triggered landslides. For the first time, President Biden met face-to-face with his Iraqi counterpart to discuss the status of U.S. forces 17 years after Operation Iraqi Freedom began. U.S. troops withdrew in 2011, only to return 3 years later to help with the fight against ISIS, which continues to pose a threat. Natalie Brand reports from the White House.
Inside the Oval Office Monday, President Biden and Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi discussed the future role of U.S. troops on the ground in Iraq.
We are not going to be, by the end of the year, in a combat mission.
In an interview with the Associated Press, the Iraqi Prime Minister said his country no longer needs U.S. combat troops to fight the Islamic State, but stressed a continued need for U.S. training, logistical support, and military intelligence.
I'd like to thank the American people on behalf of all Iraqi people. Today our relation is stronger than ever.
Currently, there are around 2,500 U.S. troops in Iraq supporting the fight against ISIS, with most of them already serving in an advise and assist capacity. Biden administration officials acknowledge that ISIS remains a threat. Within the last week, the terror group claimed responsibility for a bombing at a market in Baghdad that killed 30.
Our counterterrorism cooperation will continue even as we shift to this new phase.
Monday's announcement comes as the U.S. transitions its strategy in the Middle East, withdrawing troops from Afghanistan by the end of August, ahead of the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
The president says his administration is sending 500,000 COVID vaccine doses to Iraq in a couple of weeks. The Iraqi prime minister is expected to stay in Washington for 3 working days, and he also plans to meet with members of Congress. A bipartisan group of senators negotiating with the infrastructure bill agree that they are close, but the deadline for a deal is still up in the air. The holdup remains how to pay for some of the items in that $579 billion bill. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer wants this bill to be done before the Senate takes a 5-week break beginning August 9th. Both sides say they're optimistic. Still ahead, a reminder to check your wallet.
There are about $15 billion in unused gift cards, vouchers, and credit floating around. I'm Anthony Purra with tips on how to keep that value from going to waste.
In Health Watch, a new transplant procedure is giving hope to couples unable to have children. Topping today's Health Watch, Colorado authorities are investigating the death of a child linked to the plague. The 10-year-old's identity has not been released, but officials say the death was caused by the bacterial disease. The state's Department of Public Health and Environment says the death comes as confirmed cases of the plague were confirmed in animals and fleas in at least 6 counties. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says humans can get the plague if they're bitten by rodents or animals that are affected. New trials are underway, giving hope to families who are unable to have children. Elise Preston introduces us to a family who recently expanded thanks to a uterine transplant.
Cuddling her newborn daughter Grace is a moment Amanda Grundell describes as magical.
The first thing that I heard was her little cry, and it was the sweetest little cry.
Especially sweet because Grundell was once told it would never happen. The new mom was born without a uterus and thought pregnancy was impossible.
It was devastating. I had a loss of identity, and I felt like I didn't really belong in this world.
That changed when she enrolled in a study at the Cleveland Clinic, where doctors performed a uterine transplant. The medical team implanted a deceased donor's uterus into Amanda's pelvis, connecting the blood vessels to her own. Dr. Uma Purney heads the study, which includes 10 women and has resulted so far in 4 babies.
This is a transplant we consider to be a life-enhancing transplant, so it is not designed to last forever.
Once her transplant healed, Grundell became pregnant through IVF.
2, 3.
Her husband calls it a dream come true, despite hardships along the way.
It's not an easy road. It is filled with trials and complications, and it will test your patience until the very breaking point. But it's worth it.
The Grundells are taking time to enjoy their little girl.
I am so grateful for the doctors that have done this for me.
Before deciding whether to try for a second miracle baby. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
A new study highlights the importance of staying pitch perfect with mammograms for breast cancer prevention. Researchers say women should not miss even one regular mammogram exam because death risk jumps much higher if they do. The scientists studied more than 550,000 women as serial participants, those who did not miss any exams, or serial non-participants, missing one of 2 previous screening exams. Risk for a fatal cancer 10 years later was 50% lower for those who did not miss any exams. Missing 1 and 2 recent exams, that meant a 29% increase in risk of breast cancer. And that is a look at today's health news. A little bit later, a shortage of jet fuel is causing flight cancellations and delays in parts of the U.S.
Plus, it looks like the heat even kicks in a little bit more this week. We're going to look at that coming up next.
The Big Sports Scott.
Well, it turned out to be hot and humid for us today, like we have seen over the past several days. Finally, we got back into the 90s after actually a fairly comfortable July month. So far, we got back into the 90s on Friday, and then we've stuck there the past 4 days, and we'll stick there over the next several days as we continue to be hot and fairly humid throughout the week. Mainly dry. We have very minimal chances for a few pop-up thunderstorms, and then we do get some changes in here by the weekend. And of course, you can always get my long-range forecast on my month-long blog. That is ZKOAMnewsnow.com. Look at our temps right now. We're at 89 Nevada, 92 in Anderson, 92 Miami, 89 in Pittsburgh, 90 in Independence. So we've been heating up, and we actually have a weak little front that has actually slid through, and we're still fairly hot. Heat indices, upper 90s to lower triple digits on the Kansas and the Oklahoma side, but it looks good. 7th and range line currently outside. Clear skies, 91, feels like 98. Relative humidity is at about 53%. We're going to drop back through the 90s, 80s, eventually mid 70s a little bit later on tonight. But we do have heat advisories in effect. These really kick in tomorrow as the heat and the humidity kind of crank up a little bit. Southeastern Kansas, southwestern Missouri, and the northeastern parts of Oklahoma. But besides that, there's not much going on here. We have some thunderstorms out to the west, Wichita, Interstate 35 down to Oklahoma City. These are very scattered thunderstorms, kind of sinking off toward the south and to the east. So we may get a few of these in our northeastern Oklahoma counties, also our western counties. But besides that, I think most of us will end up staying on the dry side. You can see these kind of popping up in the heating of the day, but not really moving anywhere. And again, most of us are going to stay dry as we go through the evening hours, but there is a weak little front really from Wichita all the way back through northern parts of Arkansas. So we all have kind of a northeasterly, easterly wind. That front's going to lift back toward the north tomorrow, and that allows even more heat and humidity to really get in. Then we're kind of dominated by this big dome of high pressure all week long, keeping us hot and fairly dry. Let's go through time for us tonight. Mid 70s, overnight lows. Let's go into Tuesday. There may be an isolated thunderstorm or two, kind of like what we've seen over the past couple days, but most of us stay dry, a little bit hotter than what we saw today. 74 to start, 89 by noon, high temp at 94. Tomorrow night, pretty much clear skies, mid 70s again. As we go into Wednesday, hot, humid, high temps, mid 90s once again, plus the humidity is going to go up. So heat indices for us tomorrow about 103 to 105. These stick around as well into Wednesday, about 100 to 105 degrees. And we don't really see any changes. This really continues. So here's Thursday, mid 90s. Here's Friday, mid 90s. Here's Saturday, mid 90s. Finally, we get a front end here by the weekend, at least giving us chances for rain. But I'm going to put alert days for the next 4 days because we do have heat advisories in effect. So you want to drink plenty of fluids if you are going to be outside mid-afternoon into the early evening hours, but pretty steady mid-90s most of the week.
People have to be careful, that's
yes,
for sure.
Dangerous heat.
Thanks, Doug. Coming up, some tips on making sure money from gift cards doesn't go to waste. First, though, we honor a local veteran, Terry Mendenhall, served in the U.S. Army from 1955 to 56. He was stationed in Germany, and we salute Corporal Terry Mendenhall, a four-state hero. Topping Consumer Watch, a shortage of jet fuel is causing flight cancellations and delays at airports in the western U.S. The problem is being made worse due to a spike in fuel needed by aircraft fighting those wildfires, supply chain issues, and also a shortage of tanker truck drivers. Back to school season is in gear, and according to KPMG, parents are expected to spend $268 per child on the 2021 school year. That's up 9% from a year ago. The National Retail Federation predicts the average family will shell out a total of $849. With more students headed back to the classroom, parents are buying clothing, footwear, electronics, and other supplies. Americans will spend an estimated $200 billion in gift cards this year. But as Anthony Pearl reports, a big chunk of that money goes to waste.
Gift cards are one of the most popular gifts given. Valerie Guerrero likes receiving them, but admits it's not always a memorable experience.
You seem to be one of those people that forget about them.
Sometimes I do. It's awful. Well, because I took them away and then it's like, out of sight, out of mind.
It's a common problem.
Yeah, I think I just forget about them.
I just always forget that I have it. So that's kind of the problem.
A new survey from Bankrate finds half of U.S. adults have unused gift cards, vouchers, or store credits. The average person is sitting on $116, and many times the money is never spent. Ted Rossman is with Bankrate.com.
Half of us have lost value at some point, either because we lost the card or it expired, or maybe the business went out of business before we had a chance to use it.
Experts say there's no reason to let the value of a gift card go to waste. There are plenty of websites that will offer cash for them. Raise, Card Cash, and Gift Cash allow you to sell the card and receive about 80 to 90% of the value. Another option, give the card to someone else, even if there's a small remainder left.
You can often add additional value to it. You might not give your brother, let's say, the $4.17 Home Depot card that you have lying around, but if you can round it up to $25 or $50.
Rossman says it's a good idea to use the cards and other credits quickly.
And now that you reminded me, I'm going to go home and really dig them up.
It's important to remember the cards only become a gift when you use them. Anthony Pura, CBS News, Pasadena, California.
Bankrate.com says almost 3/4 of those with unused gift cards, vouchers, or credits have been holding on to them for a year or more. A new study shows having more money could add more years to your life. Researchers at Northwestern University tracked 5,400 Americans for almost a quarter century. They found that people who have greater wealth tend to live longer. The study also found that big earners were more likely to outlive their siblings who made less. Final check of the forecast next.
Today.
The CBS Evening News is next. Then on KOAM News at 6, we're going to hear more about new guidance for schools from the state of Missouri. Plus, construction workers are at the Joplin Airport working on runway maintenance and repairs, and an organization in Nevada, Missouri celebrates the 31st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Stay with us for the CBS Evening News and then KOAM News at 6. Scientists now believe one of Jupiter's moons has water vapor in its atmosphere. A team of researchers reviewed 2 decades worth of observations taken by the Hubble telescope from the largest planet in our solar system's largest moon. That moon is Ganymede, and scientists have long believed that it has more water than all of Earth's oceans. Problem is, if it exists, that water would be roughly 100 miles below the moon's icy surface. Well, new analysis of Hubble's data suggests when the surface ice turns from solid to gas, it forms vapor in the atmosphere. So what do you know? There is some vapor in our atmosphere here on planet Earth. It is muggy out there. It is hot, Doc.
A little humid, and it's going to get worse over the next couple days. 94 tomorrow, 95 for Wednesday, up to 97 on Friday. Heat index each day is going to be between about 100 and 107. So be careful if you're going to be outside. Drink plenty of water, and don't forget about the pets. They like water too.
That's a good tip. Thanks for joining us. CBS Evening News is next. Of course, we're going to be right back here for KOAM News at 6. See you then. Let's make it a great evening.